Hey everybody, what's going on? Slick D Gamer, Scott W. Perry here, and I'm back with the new edition of Retro Chronicles. Sorry, it's been a little lengthy between sessions, but I hope to be a little bit more consistent as we get into the summer months and for the year ahead. I'm looking at a lot of new content coming up. Be on the lookout for that, talking a lot more. But we're here for Retro Chronicles. We're chronicling the history of WWF WWE video games, and we're up to 1994, and we're still in the 16-bit era, but we're seeing definitely a change. And this is the last official game of the LJN trilogy to be released for both Super Nintendo and Genesis. And at the time, it was very popular and probably, in terms of content, the best of the three. And in November of 1994, both Super Nintendo and Genesis got RAW for both consoles. Now, the difference between this and Super WrestleMania and Royal Rumble before it is that whereas the rosters were different in those games, depending on the console that you had, in this one, it is the same 12. And quite a few make their debut as WWF was transitioning into more of a new generation era. And for the first time on the 16-bit systems, Hulk Hogan had already jumped ship to WCW. A few other people would follow. So it would be interesting to see if the WWF at the time would hold court. Now, the roster in this game is very impressive. There are a few holdovers from the last game, but a lot of new stars to signify the change that was coming. And the 12 in both games are Bret the Hitman Hart, Bam Bam Bigelow, the 1-2-3 Kid making his video game debut, also making his video game debut, Big Daddy Cool Diesel, Kevin Nash, Doink the Clown, Lex Luger is in the game, but by here he is made it in the USA, Lex Luger. Owen Hart, the late Owen Hart, brother of Bret Hart, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. Razor Ramon making his return from Royal Rumble. Shawn Michaels, who by 1994 was really getting into a singles run into high gear. Of course, The Undertaker, who would become a mainstay until now. And we wrap it off with the champion who dominated most of 1993 and into 1994, YOKOZUNA. Now that's 11. Now, in 1994, there was a groundbreaking move because the 12th person on the roster was the first ever playable female character in a WWF game, which goes to the late, great Luna Vachon. And this was really groundbreaking at the time because a lot of people were very curious on how it would be in the game. And, Luna did fit right in. I didn't play her a lot when it first came on, but it definitely started the shift of what was going to come. Luna was definitely a person ahead of her time, and unfortunately, if you look into her life, her ending is kind of sad, and I wish that there would be she should be remembered a lot more for the legacy she left behind, because she really laid a lot of groundbreaking work. She did a lot of stuff a few years before China really broke. China may have broke the doors down, but she wouldn't have done that if Luna Vachon didn't open them. So that's important. The gameplay of these games are very similar to the previous one, especially for Royal Rumble. It has all the game modes, one-on-one, tag team, Royal Rumble mode, which is back. But there's a couple more that they add. They have a tournament mode. It's not a championship mode, it's just a tournament mode where you just play as one and go against the other roster. They have I believe they have a two-person tournament mode as well. They have a brawl mode, which is basically just the other guy's meter is done and that's it. You lose the game that way. And coming back from Super WrestleMania, they added a 4-on-4 Survivor Series mode, which, if you use it well, it could lead to some lengthy matches. The gameplay is very good. Now, in addition to each one being good to their own moves, they have their signatures, they have their finishers. They also have like an arcade style move that, really defies gravity in a lot. Sadly, Owen Hart's is a bit disturbing, but the rest are pretty good. I have no idea how to handle a lot of these. We'll get to some tricks on that later. But for Super Nintendo and Genesis, these were released first. I preferred the Super Nintendo version over it. I thought the music was better, the graphics were a little bit better, and the gameplay for these games were better for the 6-button controller. You needed the 6-button Genesis controller to kind of play for the Super Nintendo. Now, these are for the 16 bits, but there were other versions released because you can't really have it without getting it on all consoles. And the first one and both of these aren't too great, but they were modeled down. And the first one for the portable system is for the Game Boy. That's RAW for the Game Boy. And it is watered down. They took 4 of the 8 out, and they only have 8 in there. Bret Hart, YOKOZUNA, Undertaker, Razor Ramon, Shawn Michaels, Lex Luger, Diesel, and Doink. Now, because it's in black, because we're still in the regular Game Boy, it's in black and white, they do their best to kind of distinguish the characters. The gameplay's not too good. It looks a lot like the Steel Cage Challenge game, and it's in black and white, so it's kind of hard to really see what's going on. But they do have finishers. They do have one-on-one tag team Survivor Series mode. It is a chore to get through. But since they released it on Game Boy, they also have to release it on the Game Gear. Now this is an interesting one because this one, while it plays exactly like the Game Boy version, you have color, but the roster is different. As a matter of fact, there's 2 additions to this roster that I would love to have seen in the 16-bit version. All right, so in this one, we have Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Bam Bam Bigelow, Lex Luger, Diesel, YOKOZUNA, The Undertaker, and we have 2 additional superstars in here. We have Crush, who in this one is the heel Crush, the bad guy Crush, who was teaming with YOKOZUNA. And in his final appearance in 17 years before he jumped ship to WCW, actually the month after this released, is the late, great Randy Macho Man Savage. This is his final appearance as a regular member of the superstar roster in a WWF WWE video game. And he wouldn't appear again for another 17 years until All Stars. But for the Game Gear version, it sucks. I'll just be plain and honest, it sucks. It's interesting that they have Crush and Savage. It does add a little bit of variety. And they do have their own finishers. It's hard to pull off. It's hard to do it with a 2-button scheme. I think they tried their best, but using that Steel Cage Challenge setup, it was good, and I understand the game sold well, but they could have tried to do something a little bit different. At least they didn't go the King of the Ring route, because I still don't like how that came out, even though they looked a little bit bigger and bulkier. The fact that they went with the smaller sprites and everything, it's kind of hard to see on a small monitor. And when you play it on a computer or using an emulator, it looks a little bit more glitchy. But with that said, those are 4 versions, but there was actually a 5th one. It's a more rare one, as the Genesis are trying to bleed out any type of life that they can get into it. And they did that by adding a little console that, it's technically a console, but you put it on top of it, and it supposedly now, the 16-bit Genesis is now 32-bit. And while it was a nice novelty concept, it just didn't sell well. But they were able to release RAW for the 32X. Now this is actually my preferred version because the graphics are much better. They're much improved from the Genesis version. You have the same 12 wrestlers, but they added a secret character, and that is the secret character of Kwang, who was a mid-carder in 1994, who a year later would gain success as Savio Vega. And Kwang has no particular move set. If you hit, I believe, the up arrow, A and B on the character selection screen, you can get him. Don't quote me on that. As I said, I'm kind of doing this on the wing of it, which I do everything. But it was a nice addition because now you had 13 characters, and if you wanted like a 12-person Royal Rumble, if you didn't feel comfortable playing as Luna, you can do that. And it was a nice addition. Very interesting to have it, but all the gameplay from the 16-bit systems are here, and Kwang was a nice addition, but it really looks great. I really like the look of it. My favorite part of the 16-bits though, 16-bit games, and this one is the show open. They really did a great job mimicking the opening of the Monday Night Raw show. And they did a really good job of it. And in certain games, you'll see at the board, you'll see, like in the highlight screen, you'll see Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler looking up at the ring. I believe, in the 32X version, it's a little bit more defined. You can see them at ringside. But overall, RAW was a success. It was pretty much the end of an era. It kind of felt like that even when the games came out. But as far as Acclaim and WWF having this good relationship, they weren't done. If you were having issues in terms of getting the secret moves, they did release on Coliseum Video, which I do have, is Strategies and Secrets, the video guide, which is a like a 45-minute video of showing the game and the wrestlers, and Todd Pettengill hosts it, but a lot of wrestlers themselves talk about their secret moves and their stats and their strategies. One thing I forgot to mention about the 16-bit versions is that each one has stats, so in different categories, so which is a trait that would be normal in other games, because in previous games, you know, YOKOZUNA, even though they kind of look the same, in previous games you can have like Shawn Michaels body slam YOKOZUNA like no problem. It's a little bit more difficult in this case. It's 1 2 3 Kid doing it. 1 2 3 Kid has a speed of 10 while YOKOZUNA has a speed of 4 or 5 or something like that. So that's grounded a little bit better. It adds for a little bit more realism, which is odd because they do more realism with having everybody has stats and everything like that, but then they add these super moves that are nearly impossible to pull off. But it's kind of fun to hear some of the wrestlers themselves talk about it and say how they do it. All right, so that's all I can say about Raw. Like I said, I do enjoy the games a lot. I don't play them as much as I used to. As far as the 16-bit era, I would say Royal Rumble is probably my favorite because of the mode, but it was good. The wrestling, the wrestler selection was really good. Like I said, the handheld versions really showed the limited capabilities of the time, but we were really seeing that it was time for a change, and that's going to come when WWF returns to the arcade games and gets a little bit into the Mortal Kombat craze, and that's coming up next on Retro Chronicles. But for now, this is Slate the Gamer, Scott W. Perry, signing off.